good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cyber Protection Magazine Roundtable, with today's topics being artificial intelligence in detection and response. I have with me, looking at my screen from left to right, I have Markus Auer, Regional Sales Manager, Central Europe at ThreatQuotient. I have Ivan Mans, CTO of SecurityBridge, and Matthias Canisius, Regional Director of SentinelOne, and Professor Kai Oliver Detken from the University of Bremen. What I'd like to do is everyone to introduce themselves, and since today's topic is detection and response, and the new buzzwords which is out in the market is called XDR, so Extended Detection and Response. Please, after the introduction, can you briefly state or define what XDR means for you? So we'll start with Markus. Markus, go ahead.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks, Patrick, for the invitation. So as you said, I'm the regional manager for ThreatQuotient Central Europe. I have a technical background, so I see myself more as a kind of an advisor rather than a salesperson, and yeah, happy to be here. So yeah, XDR, as you said, has evolved into a kind of a buzzword over the last year, I would say. And from our perspective, XDR is a combination of endpoint, network, and cloud detection and response tool, plus a couple of other tools that are playing with that. And we see XDR as the logical evolution of a couple of problems that companies have, like tools are working in silos. Companies don't have a single pane of glass of the alarms and detections they generate. And they are sometimes struggling to initiate a coordinated response to cyber threat via all their tools they are using in their network.
Okay, thanks, Markus. Ivan, please introduce yourself and define what XDR means for you.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. First and foremost, many thanks for having me in today's session. Now, a quick note about myself. I'm CTO at SecurityBridge, which basically makes me responsible for driving product innovation, and that in a very specific world of SCP. Now, I've been a techie for a long time already, so since about 25 years, and I've experience going from development to more recently, since about 2012, I'm into SCP security. And SCP has very often been seen as a bit of an isolated island because it is a very specific application. It remains a key application within many enterprises. So I was actually very eager to jump onto your invitation to join today's panel discussion, because also XDR for the SCP community will mainly be a buzzword. Now, clearly it is nothing new. It is a logical evolution, as some of the other guys already mentioned on the call. Now, for an SCP platform, it becomes especially important to bridge the different worlds of SCP application security with the broader world of IT security. So I'm actually very eager to go into this conversation today and actually learn a bit myself.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. Matthias, you're next.
Hi, yeah, my name is Matthias Canisius from SentinelOne, running the DACH region, and yeah, XDR, as already said, is a bit cloudy still. And in the old days, we have always put an NG before or behind something if we weren't sure how it will finally be when it's out defined. Now it's the X, which is for us kind of a placeholder and an evolution that EDR and also what we have seen from the next generation antivirus kind of glued together, and the evolution of EDR and kind of reducing or extending the scope from the pure security relevant information that comes from the endpoint towards what already Markus said, towards several information that I have in the network, that I have in the cloud, in order to really broaden the picture, to enable also the customer, whatever size the customer has, from small to very large, to take smart decisions with a very excellent signal to noise ratio that allows him also to automate, including artificial intelligence, and yeah, making making quite valuable decisions in a very short amount of time, while reflecting information that are coming from a lot of sensors out of its network, not only from the endpoint itself. And that's it a little bit in a nutshell. And I'm looking forward what will be the outcome and what will be the evolution moving forward.
Thanks, Matthias. And last but not least, Kai Oliver, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name is Kai Oliver Detken from Germany and Bremen. Yes, I'm a professor of the University of Applied Science in Bremen, but that is not my main job. My main job is managing director at my company, Deco IT. And we are a system integrator and software development house, and we deal with IT security solutions 20 years. Approximately, more or less, and since 7-8 years we developed also own SIEM systems or XDR systems, as you it's a, for me it's a more or less definition, question of definition. And yes, so we are on one hand in many practical projects involved for small and medium enterprises, and on the other hand, we also have take part in national BMBF and BMWI research projects with other partners. And yes, that's it's the short introduction for myself. XDR, what is it for me? It's it's a good question. For me, it's a more or less an enhancement of EDR, but from also the SIEM systems go for me in the direction of XDR. So it's more or less a further buzzword for me. And yes, another kind of solutions in the cloud of SIEM systems or other things. So we have several buzzwords here: EDR, XDR, and SOAR systems and SIEM systems. And yeah, you can also build all this kind of terms with one system. So you can have a SIEM system with XDR functionality, and you can have an XDR systems with SIEM functionality. So for me, it's not. Yeah, it's a question that's not so easy to answer.
Thanks, Kai Oliver. And I think you raised an interesting point there. I mean, we have some of you are coming more from the endpoint detection, or what was formerly known as endpoint detection, if we talk about XDR, and we have some of you who came more from the SIEM area, some more from the threat detection.
Yeah.
Maybe if we approach XDR by its term, so extended detection and response. So what is the extended part? Markus, what would you say?
So, I mean, the extended part, and I think, when we look at what Gartner defines, the extended part is really to bring a couple of technologies together. Because as I said before, the problem is we have so many tools, and some of the companies, they have 30, 40, 50 different security tools, and these are working in silos. So the extended part from our perspective is to get this vision across the framework and do not see only the security tools in silos, but to see it as a whole. And that's from our perspective, the extended part from a detection perspective. And from a response part, as I said, a SIEM, a SIEM was never designed for responding. A SIEM is the workhorse for security operations, for detecting, for collecting and analyzing millions and billions of log files, but they were never designed to respond. There are other technologies, and the connection from the detection to the response and make this pretty much automated so we get faster, I think that's what it's meant by extended.
Okay, that makes sense. Matthias, would you agree with what Markus said?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like to look at it, and also Kai Oliver said it. If you just make it very simple, saying it's mainly the extension of EDR, and E stands for the endpoint. And if you take the X not as extended and just as a placeholder for whatever data, then it starts to make sense to look at the network and what sensors do I have in the network and what security relevant information could be interesting to broaden the picture outside of what the endpoint delivers as security relevant information. And then the puzzle gets bigger. Your decision can be more precise, can be faster as you have a better and sharper picture of your environment and of what is security relevant. And the second thing, what I would like to add to Markus, because he meant the word SIEM was mentioned, the difference is that SIEM is mainly a data collector and kind of creates an alert or whatever. And I agree, it's not built for responding, and it has a very high ratio from noise to signal, versus an XDR is security purpose built and kind of has a very low signal to noise ratio, because it looks usually only at security relevant information and tries to paint that picture. So whereas the SIEM set is more a data collection and generic approach towards it, which I don't want to give it a quality, the XDR is more to build to look into security relevant data, assess it, and kind of create an automated, ideally an automated reaction towards what you have drafted as a picture. That's the way I think. That's what I would add to Markus.
Okay, thanks. So Markus and Matthias, you both have been arguing a little bit from the endpoint perspective, but maybe Ivan, you're coming from the back end, and also you're not coming from the infrastructure, but from the application. Would you agree with what Matthias and Markus have said?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we talk about XDR, and I think, Matthias, you mainly focused on it, there you would need to have that intelligence already from those backend endpoints.
Yeah.
And there's a very big difference in, we actually still, I've been grown up in that silo called SEP. And to us, it's also of utmost importance to get the information actually from the other side of the world, from that network intelligence.
Absolutely.
For instance, because we also could use that. So I do see it as something that is bi-directional. On one side, a SIEM platform, it's a big data lake. They consume massive amounts of data, very often just stupid data. There's a lot of data which is not instantly security relevant. There's a lot of context information, where in XDR, it relies on actually actionable alerts. There needs to be some intelligence already coming from that backend. So that for me, it's an extremely interesting story. And it's actually a bit surprising that the SIEM world, it took such a long time to actually evolve to the phase where we are today with XDR.
Yeah, and one of the differences as well is that the SIEM doesn't create data itself. Mm-hmm. And the XDR creates data itself, not only from the endpoint, but also from the IoT space, plus is trying, and that is the evolution I think we are currently in, plus trying to kind of digest external information from external firewalls or whatever you want to call it, from identity management. So I guess that is the next evolutionary step we're going to see, that we can also digest additional and even unstructured information coming from several edges of the IT security stack. Let's phrase it that way. And that will, and this is then where SIEM and XDR is getting a bit closer from a pure capability point of view, I guess.
I think that's a very good point, and that's also I think where the artificial intelligence comes in, because if you aggregate all that data, I mean, just the SIEM system has probably millions and billions even in large corporations of data which it's just collecting over time. And then, as you said, Matthias, if there's more data coming in, or also data from applications, additionally to the application, to the data from the infrastructure, plus unstructured data from other areas, that's definitely where you would that's where you definitely would need artificial intelligence to make sense out of that data. And maybe, I don't know, Kai Oliver, with your experience, not only in the SIEM space, but also from the research perspective, how do you see artificial intelligence playing a role there? And also maybe interesting, How would you define that or distinguish that from machine learning?
Yes, that's also a good question. Yes, AI is a very important thing for such systems, because we have big data here or the big data problem here in the databases behind in the back end, and we have on the other hand maybe personal administrators which are not really able to see what's going on here and what for security security activities they have to do. But on the other hand, as we mentioned before, the automatically reactions from such systems is for the most companies not a good mechanism. Because they don't want, especially small and medium enterprises or small and medium enterprises or bigger companies, they don't want that the system react automatically, because it can be a problem for the productive systems and the whole network. The availability, and that is the main or the important things to have high availability in such networks. So we do that in our SIEM systems, for example, in the combination with a NAC system, with a network access control system. So we collect this data, we find out the anomaly with an anomaly detection. With more or less AI mechanisms, and send it back to the network access control. And the network access control have to find out should we react here automatically, or should we send this to an administrator, and the decision has to be found by people here from the company who is working at this topic. So it's very important to have more intelligence in such systems, because of many false positives are here. But we have only here the first step to do that. It's many things to do to bring here more intelligence into the systems.
Yeah, maybe I could just add one point to this, because this is very interesting. So and it brings us to another topic I think that was on the list, SOAR. So we all would like to automate as much as possible. You know, we want to get a workload from the teams, we want to get faster. So automation is great, but automation, Kai, as you said, has a big danger, because if you initiate, let's say, a playbook in a SOAR tool based on a false positive, you could create more damage than good. And that's why theoretically it's great, but it all depends on the data that is initiating something. And that's where intelligence comes in. And so the data has to be fully, or the situation, I have to say, has to be fully understood. The data has to be analyzed and curated, and only if you are close to 100% certain this is not a false positive, you're going to start initiating something, right? And this is where, you know, our part, and I'm happy to talk about that later on, but this is where intelligence comes in. Create an automated action based on intelligence, and there are several factors that are playing within this.
But how precise can artificial intelligence, as of today, play that role of giving that intelligence?
So if you're asking me, to a certain degree. Now, artificial intelligence or machine learning or algorithms, however we want to call them, they are great to help us in this big data problem. And so artificial intelligence will be a key part in an XDR initiative in the future to understand threats that can't be identified by a single indicator. So connecting the dots is part of what artificial intelligence has to do. And artificial intelligence also needs to incorporate to define what action needs to be done if new information comes in, if things are changing. So are we there yet? I would say no, definitely not. Are we on the right way to get there? Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay, if we look at the past evolution of cybersecurity in general, I mean, it started out with infrastructure, I think, and it slowly evolved into applications. And is that something which we will see now as well? Because right now we have a good idea of, or artificial intelligence, I should say, has a good idea of how infrastructure threats or events are related, and if they're a security threat, but they don't know about the application, or if we even go into the operational technology, so plants and stuff. Kai also mentioned CRITIS, so critical infrastructure. Doesn't that increase the amount of data just tremendously, and how can we cope with that? And I think, Ivan, you wanted to say something, and I think you're probably also the right person to address that topic.
Yeah, I was a bit eager, AI and machine learning, clearly they're all buzzwords, but especially when we talk about application security, it does remain a challenge, and very often we see actually vendors overstating those terms, because as soon as we start looking underneath the hood, we talk about statistical validation, anomaly detection, which is not truly AI or machine learning. So I think, at least from the application perspective, we're still in the very early phase, and it does remain a challenge to really identify the true threats from all those false positives that we may have. Now, clearly, it remains a continuous challenge, and the biggest benefit that we see today, and that we even within an SCP space, we are at that stage. We can define anomalies, but they're mainly there to reduce the noise, to find that signal within that vast amount of data. So it is definitely an enabler to have a security operations center, for instance, focus on the right stuff instead of going through the masses. But I'm not yet convinced that we are at the stage that we can say these are the necessary dots that will help us to really explain an attack pattern, at least not from the application layer.
I think that also plays into another issue which we wanted to discuss, because you mentioned the Security Operations Center, but a Security Operations Center can really only be afforded by large corporations, because they have the manpower, or they have the resources to hire manpower from the market. But small and medium-sized businesses don't have the resources, but they still need cybersecurity. And I think especially the last year with the pandemic and everything showed that SMB, small, medium-sized businesses, are increasingly a target of cybercrime. So how can we address that? And maybe, Kai, because you have some experience in that SMB space, maybe you can say something on that.
Yes, small and medium enterprises today, they don't know something about XDR, SOAR, or SIEM systems. So you have to explain what this kind of security solutions are, and what improvements here can be reached. So our approach here is to implement or develop systems which are able to handle false positives and other messages, more or less automatically. So the administrator don't need to know about something about IT security and something else, or what is a SIEM system. He gets directly a recommendation what it is to do, what kind of problem here is, and can handle this on its own. The other thing is, of course, a good approach is to use SIEM or XDR systems in a cloud, within a cloud, by an SIEM provider, for example. So you have there the experts for the SMEs, and they can help directly if there is a big problem around. But that's more or less also a problem maybe with German policies like DSC for yes, what's the kind of DS
DSGVO.
Yes, that's right. Maybe it can be a problem, but yeah, it's a question.
Okay, yeah, I just saw Matthias unmuting himself. I was addressing Matthias as well, but Matthias, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, especially in the mid-size area, the IT security in the SMB space is usually the ugly kid in the corner. It has not a lot of attention. A lot of these companies are owner-driven, and it's something you have to do, and you don't give a lot of attention. On the other hand, where do the innovations happen in Germany? They happen in the mid-size field. Large organizations, they integrate, they don't innovate. And that means there is a great attack surface, not a high level of security on one hand, but a very attractive target due to the fact that the innovations happen there, right? So, and with that said, and I would disagree also to some stuff that Kai Oliver and Markus said. I disagree completely with the fact that that it's about intelligence and that it's about manual interaction, because it simply does not work. And it doesn't work for the large guys, even within the SOCs. That's the reason why all the SOC guys are looking for SOAR tools. And there is no chance to solve a digital problem manually with too much human intervention, which is the reason why we build XDRs. That is the reason for that, because it kind of democratizes a certain level of endpoint detection and protection, right? And because it gives the ability and the level of automation towards people that have a lower skill level, because it does a lot on its own. And the two things it does on its own, and this is the paradigm shift of the last 10 years in security, is the fact that information and infrastructure, if with the zero trust thought in mind, has moved from its single point, from the perimeter, from the centralistic castle to everywhere. Infrastructure and company information now is everywhere. And this has changed. So the parameter is literally the endpoint itself. And the second thing is that we have moved from a concept. Look at Sunburst. All intelligence was worth nothing. Large companies were kind of 420 of the Fortune 500 were breached, and they had billions of security in their systems, right? In their stack spendings, I mean. And that means the paradigm shift is moving from security that is built on prior knowledge, so something we have experienced and we use that now to create security, has moved to the necessity to understand what is happening on execution or latest after execution, which is the term detection, literally. And therefore, and this is then where AI comes to play. It can enable systems, and I'm not talking about SentinelOne, it's a general kind of piece. It can enable systems to automatically understand behavior, rate it, track it, and create an automated response that enables even small companies to take smart decisions on the fly, versus they probably decide manually on the last percentage, but everything else will definitely not work at all.
That sounded a little bit, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the preemptive crime department. In that
Minority Report.
Minority Report. That's
and it's true. And it's true. Digital behavior can be tracked via machine learnings, and that means a single behavioral indicator is not a problem. But the combination of several behavioral indicators can be a problem. Somebody enters a room, has a high heart rate, has wet hands, has red skin, has a high pulse, has a lot of adrenaline in his veins, walking like kind of shaky. takes the hand in his jacket and pulls the gun. He will likely shoot due to the fact that all the other indicators kind of project it, right? Somebody comes into a room, is completely relaxed, no high pulse, no adrenaline, takes the gun out and is cleaning it. You know what I mean? In the first example, a system needed to have to cut that process before he triggers the gun. In the second example, no problem. Why should he not clean his gun?
That might be true, but there's that.
Hey, it's a discussion. We need to provoke each other a little bit. Come on.
I don't want to turn this into a philosophical discussion, but the example you mentioned, it could be just someone who's coming into the room and just had a fight with his girlfriend, and that's why his pulse is high, whereas the adrenaline is high. But he doesn't mean no harm. So that could also be a reason. How can you distinguish between those?
Absolutely, fully agree, Patrick. It's just an example and I wanted to say that a single digital behavioral indicator is nothing a system should trigger after. It is the combination of a certain behavior that allows systems to predict that it probably will harm the customer or the organization. And this even more. Imagine these days it's also about fileless malware. PowerShell is trending up a lot, and PowerShell is a very useful tool. And how you deal with that if not to look for the digital behavior and rate it? And you can't do that manually, because really mankind is really bad in accessing a lot of data. We are very good in giving it a verdict, but we are not good in collecting all the data and making sense out of a haystack, right? And that's where AI comes to play.
So if I understand you correctly, the objective of AI is not to automatically respond, but to have a very high probability of detecting a malicious activity, and then showing only these events with a very high probability to a human who can then decide whether they should take action or not.
Yeah, the AI helps us to analyze and to see that digital behavior, and then it allows us to automatically say, this is a threat, and this is to 99.9% likely a threat, and something we have never seen before. And it doesn't matter if this was triggered by a macro, by a code, a line of code, or by a file where we have double clicked on. This doesn't truly matter, because behavior is behavior, right? No matter where it was triggered from. And then once we know this is a threat, the system should automatically trigger a response.
Correct, but just one thing. So first of all, Matthias, maybe I wasn't clear. Maybe I spoke a bit in a misunderstanding way. So absolutely, we need to automate. What I said is we need the right information at the right time to initiate an automated reaction. That's what I said. But what you just said is absolutely, and that's where I said we need AI, we need machine learning to detect things that are not identifying by a single indicator. But when they have detected, we need intelligence to verify, is this really something? Absolutely. And this is where, and this is just one sentence, and this is where, threat intelligence comes into play. The knowledge about on operational, strategic, and tactical level. So combine that information then with information from the outside world you get from the MITRE ATT&CK framework, on adversaries and TTPs, where you can match what you have detected and verify, or use operational information like indicators saying, oh yes, we have in this chain of detection, we have seen an IOC, and this IOC is related to an attack, to an adversary. Yeah, guys, there is a problem, and now we have to do something, right? This is where the intelligence parts in to verify. What we detected, is it malicious? And if yes, go in action.
Okay, good. We are on the same page. So,
okay. I think we're also reaching almost the time limit. But if I can summarize, is that we have the challenge that there will be more and more data, and that data is not only coming from single endpoints or just a firewall, but it's coming from more and more sources, which includes application data, which includes operational technology, and all different kinds of things. And in order to actually make sense out of that, we will need artificial intelligence going forward.
Yeah.
In order to at least say with a high probability that there's an actual threat, rather than just an unusual activity, which could have many reasons. Now, one question I would like to ask each one of you, one of my favorite questions actually, if we look into the future a little bit, like say 5 years, Gartner will probably have coined another term for what we now know as XDR, but where would you like to see XDR going forward if we look in say 2025 or 2026? And I'll start with Markus again.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of what's the vision? So my vision is if you look at security operations, we have these threefold approach of people, processes, and technologies. And when we look under the hood now, do we have really a balance of these three parts? Most of the time, it's not. So my vision would be is to bring all these three pillars, people, processes, and technologies on a single platform, so that they can really work together. And by doing that, you will automatically make technology more efficient, you make processes more efficient, and all the stakeholders are able to get the right information at the right time they need to complete their task.
Okay, thanks. Ivan, what would you say from the more application-driven side?
Yeah, I think more from the application side is to us, it is very, very important to make, to emphasize on, security by default, that all the technology providers actually take security as a core design element. And a very basic example is, there's tons of data, a lot of data is so massively cryptic, where on the other side, if you would take security by design from the root, you would always ensure that, everything that may raise a security alert, that may raise an anomaly and so on, also becomes speaking. We always deal with limited budget, resource constraints. So if every single platform would actually embed that into its kernel, that would allow, these cross technologies like XDR to actually work very efficiently. And that also, maybe Patrick, to also, respond to your earlier question, security is not just for the happy few. Security should be there for everyone, because also these small organizations, they have the same risk at a different scale, but they have the same risk. So it needs to be affordable. How can you make it affordable? Make it standard, make it accessible. So this is why I see at least our application areas growing into standardization.
Okay, thanks. Matthias, what's your take on the future?
Yeah, I think in 5 years from now, we will no longer talk about EPP, AV, EDR. And I think also that SIEM will be completely replaced by XDR in 5 years. We will no longer talk about that. I think that machine learning and the ability also to understand the several areas of data sources and data structures will be all put into that single cloud and will be assessed in that automatically to a certain extent. And I guess this is I'm not sure whether it's because XDR in 5 years, but what we now understand as an XDR will replace a lot of single solutions at the moment, and this is my last sentence on that, and it will help, as I said at the beginning, to make things like EDR, like SIEM and other things, not a solution for the upper class customers. So it will help to really democratize a high technology solution and will allow also smaller entities to create an automated level of security that's unlike what they have at the moment.
Okay, thanks. And lastly, Kai, you're closer to research. So how do you see the future?
Yeah, it's also a difficult question, but yes, I think we will get new buzzwords here from Gartner or other companies. Maybe not SIEM or SOAR or whatever, but what we need is in every case that we have to decrease the false positives to get here more intelligence into the system. to solve the big data problem. I think we are on a good way here, but we need more intelligence and we need more more algorithms here which are not available now, new algorithms. And that is the main, I think, the main work here to bring more intelligence into this, such a system, and yeah, which kind of buzzword here will arise, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, guys. And yeah, I think we're all looking forward to the creativity of Gartner for the next couple of years. I'm definitely looking forward to repeat that round in 5 years, but of course, I also hope that we'll speak or that I'll speak with you, with each of you, a little bit earlier than that. So thanks for that very interesting discussion. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what's happening in XDR and in artificial intelligence in the near future. Thanks.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.